Most people think the gardening season is basically over by August. The tomatoes are ripening on the vine, the zucchini is taking over the kitchen counter, and those pepper plants are finally doing their thing after months of waiting. It feels like the finish line. That was true back in April, when every gardening channel told you to get your seeds in the ground. By August, the growing season should be winding down. So, why are the most productive backyard growers treating August like it is opening day? Because August might actually be the single best month to start planting. The soil is already warm, which means seeds germinate faster than they do in the cold, soggy ground of early spring. The brutal pest pressure from June and July is tapering off, and the vegetables that go into the ground right now, in the late summer heat, will develop a sweetness in the cooler fall air that spring-planted crops almost never match. Nobody was paying attention to this window a few years ago. Fall gardening was something your grandmother talked about, not something that filled up YouTube feeds. That was about to change, because the people growing food year-round figured out that August is where the real flavor lives. So here are 15 vegetables you need to get into the soil this month. And some of these have stories behind them that go back thousands of years. Number 15. Radishes. If you only plant one thing from this list, make it radishes. They are the fastest vegetable you can grow, and that is not an exaggeration. Some varieties, like Cherry Belle and French Breakfast, go from a tiny seed to a crunchy root you can pull out of the ground in as little as 3 weeks, 21 days. You could plant them on a Monday, and before the month is over, you are eating them in a salad. Radishes go back thousands of years to ancient Asia. The Egyptians grew them, the Greeks grew them, and the Romans grew them. The word radish itself comes from the Latin word radix, which just means root. And here is something most people have never heard of. Every December 23rd in the city of Oaxaca, Mexico, there is a festival called La Noche de Rabanos, which translates to the Night of the Radishes. Locals carve giant radishes, some weighing up to 10 pounds, into elaborate sculptures for a Christmas celebration that has been going on for over a century. For August planting, direct sow your seeds about ½ inch deep and 1 inch apart. Water them consistently because dry soil makes radishes woody and bitter. And do not forget about daikon radishes either. Despite being called a Japanese radish by most people in the West, the daikon actually originated in China. In Chinese, the word for carrot literally translates to giant foreign radish. That's not a typo, by the way. Number 14. Lettuce. Lettuce bolts in the summer heat, which is why your spring crop probably turned bitter and shot up a flower stalk by July. But here is the trick that experienced growers use. If you plant lettuce seeds in August, the seedlings establish in the warmth and then mature in the cooler temperatures of September and October, which is exactly what lettuce wants. The result is crisp, sweet leaves instead of the tough, bitter ones you fought with all summer. Lettuce is one of the oldest cultivated vegetables on the planet, native to the Mediterranean region. The ancient Egyptians were growing it over 4,000 years ago, originally for the oil in its seeds, before they figured out the leaves were worth eating too. Ancient Egyptian tomb paintings actually depict lettuce plants, and the vegetable was associated with the fertility god Min. It was considered sacred. We went from sacred temple offering to side salad, but the plant itself barely changed. For your August sowing, go with loose leaf varieties because they mature faster than head lettuces. Red and green leaf lettuce, oak leaf, and butterhead types are all solid choices. Plant the seeds shallow, barely 1/4 inch deep. And if your area is still getting scorching afternoon sun, give them some shade. A piece of rao cover, or even a propped-up board on the south side of the bed works perfectly. You can start harvesting outer leaves in as little as 30 days, while the center keeps growing. One thing that catches beginners off guard is spacing. Scatter the seeds thinly and then thin the seedlings to about 6 inches apart once they sprout. Those thinnings are edible too, so toss them straight into your next meal. Number 13. Kale. Kale is one of those vegetables that actually gets better after a frost. The cold temperatures cause the plant to convert its starches into sugars, which is why fall-harvested kale tastes sweeter and less bitter than anything you pick in warm weather. The Greeks and Romans ate kale regularly, and it was a staple across Europe through the Middle Ages. Colonists brought it to North America in the 1600s. For most of its history, kale was considered plain, everyday food, nothing fancy. Then somewhere around 2012, it became a superfood overnight, and suddenly every juice bar in Brooklyn was charging $8 for a kale smoothie. And that wasn't even the most interesting part of the story. A single cup of raw kale delivers over 500% of your daily value of vitamin K. That is not a rounded estimate. That is the actual number from the USDA nutrient database. Kale belongs to the brassica family, making it a close relative of cabbage, broccoli, and turnips. Plant seeds directly in the garden about a 1/4 inch deep and 18 inches apart. You will start picking leaves in about 55 to 65 days, and the plants will keep producing right through the first hard frosts of winter. Number 12. Spinach. Spinach has one of the best origin stories of any vegetable in your garden. It started in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, where it was cultivated over 2,000 years ago. In the 7th century, the king of Nepal sent spinach seeds to the emperor of China as a diplomatic gift, and the Chinese called it the Persian herb. They loved it so much, they planted it along the edges of their rice paddies. It took another 400 years for spinach to reach Europe, carried to Spain by the Moors during their conquest. From there, it spread north. Catherine de' Medici was so obsessed with spinach that when she left Florence to marry the King of France, she brought her own cooks who knew how to prepare it properly. That is why, to this day, any French dish labeled à la Florentine means it contains spinach. Named after Catherine's hometown, for August planting, spinach is a natural fit because it prefers cooler weather and can handle light frosts. Sow seeds directly about 1/2 inch deep and 2 inches apart. Keep the soil consistently moist because spinach seeds are slow to germinate in dry conditions. You will be harvesting baby leaves in as little as 37 days. And this is where things get really practical. Because the next few vegetables on this list are the ones that separate casual gardeners from people who actually feed themselves from their backyard. Number 11. Arugula. The ancient Romans knew arugula as eruca, and they grew it as both a food and a medicine. Virgil, the poet who wrote the Aeneid, considered arugula an aphrodisiac. Pliny the Elder wrote about it in his Encyclopedia of Natural History, recommending it not just for the kitchen, but also as a painkiller. The Romans tossed it into salads alongside romaine lettuce and lavender, which is a combination that sounds like it belongs on a modern restaurant menu, not a 2,000-year-old Roman dinner table. The name arugula itself has a specific origin. In southern Italy, the plant was called aruculu. When Italian immigrants arrived in the United States in the late 1800s and early 1900s, most of them came from southern Italy and brought both the seeds and the dialect name with them. That is why Americans say arugula, while the British call the exact same plant rocket, a word that came from the French roquette. Arugula is one of the easiest August crops you can grow. Scatter seeds on the surface of your soil, press them in gently, and water. It germinates in just a few days when the soil is warm, and you can start cutting peppery leaves in 3 to 4 weeks. It is a cut-and-come-again crop, so keep harvesting the outer leaves and the plant keeps producing. If you've never grown it before, this month is the perfect time to start. Number 10. Beets. Here is something that might surprise you. The beet you pull from your garden and the sugar that sweetens your coffee can come from the same species of plant. Sugar beet and garden beet are both varieties of Beta vulgaris, domesticated from the same wild ancestor, a scraggly plant called sea beet that still grows on coastal cliffs around the Mediterranean. Beets were first domesticated in the Middle East, and for most of their early history, people only ate the greens. The roots were small and tough. It took centuries of selective breeding to develop the fat, sweet, ruby red roots we know today. The Romans grew them, but their beets looked nothing like ours. August is an excellent time to sow beet seeds because the roots develop their best flavor when they mature in cool weather. Plant seeds about 1 inch apart and 1/2 inch deep. One thing that trips up a lot of new growers is that each beet seed is actually a cluster of 2 to 4 seeds fused together in a corky little capsule. So you will need to thin the seedlings once they come up. If you skip thinning, you end up with a tangle of stunted roots competing for the same space. Give each plant about 3 to 4 inches of room, harvest in 50 to 70 days, and eat the greens too. Beet greens are loaded with nutrients and taste great, sautéed with a little garlic and olive oil. And if you want to get creative, try growing a variety like Chioggia, the Italian heirloom with candy-striped red and white rings inside. Slice one open and it looks like a bullseye. It was developed near the town of Chioggia on the Venetian lagoon, and it has been grown there since at least the early 1800s. Roast it, and the stripes fade to pink. Eat it raw in thin slices, and people will think you bought something expensive from a specialty market. Number 9. Carrots. Carrots were not always orange. The earliest cultivated carrots, grown in Persia and Afghanistan around the 10th century, were purple and yellow. Orange carrots did not appear until the 1600s in the Netherlands, and the popular story is that Dutch growers bred them to honor William of Orange. Whether or not that tale is true, the orange carrot took over the world and almost completely replaced the older purple and yellow varieties. Carrots planted in August actually taste better than spring-planted carrots, and there is real science behind it. When temperatures cool down in the fall, carrots respond by converting their stored starches into sugars. The result is a noticeably sweeter root. This is not subtle either. If you have only ever eaten supermarket carrots, a fall-harvested garden carrot will taste like a different vegetable entirely. The catch with August sowing is that carrot seeds are tiny and they struggle to push through dry, crusty soil. Water the bed daily after planting, or lay a board or piece of burlap over the row to hold in moisture until the seeds germinate. Some experienced growers mix carrot seeds with radish seeds before sowing. The radishes germinate first and break the soil surface, creating space for the slower carrot seedlings to follow. By the time you pull the radishes 3 weeks later, the carrots have the entire row to themselves. 2 crops from one sowing, and the radishes did the hard work of loosening the soil. Plant carrots a 1/4 inch deep and thin to 2 inches apart once the seedlings are a couple of inches tall. Most varieties will be ready in 60 to 80 days. And if you leave them in the ground into November and cover the bed with a thick layer of straw mulch, you can pull sweet, cold-stored carrots straight from the garden well into winter. The ground acts as a natural refrigerator. Number 8. Swiss chard. Swiss chard is a workhorse. You plant it once, and it keeps feeding you for months. A sowing in August gives you tender baby leaves by early fall, and then the plant just keeps going. Chard is hardy enough to survive frosts, and in milder climates, it will produce right through the winter and into spring. One planting, 6 months or more of harvests. What makes chard visually striking, especially varieties like Bright Lights, is the rainbow of stem colors: red, orange, yellow, pink, and white stems holding up dark green leaves. It belongs to the same family as beets and spinach, which explains why the leaves taste similar to spinach but with a slightly earthier, more mineral flavor. Sow seeds about 1 inch deep and 6 inches apart. Like beet seeds, chard seeds are multi-germ clusters, so expect to thin. Chard tolerates partial shade better than most vegetables, so if you have a spot in your garden that gets afternoon shade, this is the crop for it. Start picking outer leaves when they are 6 to 8 inches tall, and the center of the plant will keep pushing out new growth. One underrated trick with chard is succession harvesting. Instead of cutting the whole plant down, just snap off the largest outer stalks every few days. The plant responds by pushing out fresh growth from the center, and a single plant can produce this way for months on end. In milder climates, a chard plant you start in August can still be producing leaves the following April. That is 8 months of food from one seed. If you're finding this helpful, hit subscribe. We put out new growing guides and food deep dives every week. Now, the next vegetable on this list is one that most people completely overlook, and it is a mistake. Enter the turnip, a root vegetable that fed entire civilizations before the potato ever showed up. Number 7. Turnips. Before potatoes arrived from the Americas in the 1500s, turnips were the starchy staple of Europe. They were cheap, easy to grow, and stored well through the winter. For centuries, turnips kept peasant families alive during cold months when nothing else was growing. The potato basically stole the turnip's job, and turnips have never fully recovered their reputation. Turnips are native to Asia and were grown by the ancient Greeks and Romans. They are fast growers. Some varieties go from seed to harvest in as little as 40 days, which makes them perfect for August planting. You get the root and the greens, which means double the food from a single crop. Turnip greens are common in southern cooking in the United States. Braised low and slow with a little pork, and they are packed with vitamins A, C, and K. Direct sow seeds a 1/4 inch deep and about 4 inches apart. If a turnip variety says 40 days to maturity on the seed packet, assume closer to 50 in August conditions because the days are getting shorter. Harvest when the roots are 2 to 3 inches across for the best flavor. Bigger turnips get woody and bitter. Number 6. Bush beans. August is your last call for bush beans, and you need to move fast. Bush beans need warm soil to germinate, which August provides, but they also need enough frost-free days to produce a harvest before cold weather shuts them down. Count backwards from your area's average first frost date. If you have at least 55 to 60 days, you are good. If not, skip this one and focus on the cold hardy crops on this list. Bush beans are a type of common bean, Phaseolus vulgaris, domesticated in Central and South America thousands of years ago. They were one of the 3 sisters crops, grown alongside corn and squash by indigenous peoples across the Americas. The bean plants fix nitrogen in the soil, which feeds the corn, while the squash leaves shade the ground and hold in moisture. It was a complete food production system designed thousands of years before modern agriculture caught up to the same ideas. Plant bush bean seeds about 1 inch deep and 3 inches apart in rows that are 18 inches wide. Do not start them indoors because beans do not transplant well. Water regularly, but avoid getting the leaves wet, which invites fungal disease. You will be picking beans in about 50 to 60 days. Number 5. Broccoli. Broccoli is Italian, not Italian by way of somewhere else. Actually, originally Italian. The Etruscans, who lived in central Italy before the rise of Rome, were already cultivating members of the cabbage family that would eventually become broccoli. The word itself comes from the Italian broccolo, which derives from the Latin brachium, meaning arm or branch, because the florets look like little branching arms. Pliny the Elder, the Roman naturalist, described how Romans grew, harvested, and cooked broccoli-like vegetables in the 1st century. The Roman cookbook attributed to Apicius includes recipes for boiling them with spices, onion, wine, and oil. And Romans reportedly ate raw broccoli before banquets because they believed it helped the body absorb alcohol better. So the original broccoli was basically ancient Roman party food. Broccoli did not leave Italy in any meaningful way until 1533, when Catherine de' Medici married Henry II and introduced it to the French court. For August planting, start broccoli seeds in small pots indoors or in a shaded area of your garden. Transplant the seedlings into the garden in September when temperatures start cooling. The heads develop best in cool weather, and broccoli can handle light frosts without any damage. Number 4. Cilantro. If you have ever tried growing cilantro in the summer, you know the frustration. It bolts almost immediately in hot weather, sending up a flower stalk and turning bitter before you have even had a chance to use it. August planting solves that problem completely. The seeds go in while the soil is warm, which helps them germinate quickly, and then the plants grow and produce leaves through the cooler fall temperatures that cilantro actually prefers. Cilantro is one of the oldest herbs in human history. Seeds have been found in archaeological sites dating back nearly 8,000 years. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans all used it. It is mentioned in the book of Exodus, where manna is described as resembling coriander seed. Today, the plant goes by 2 names depending on which part you are talking about. The leaves are cilantro. The seeds are coriander. Same plant, two names, and both are used in kitchens all over the world. Sow seeds directly in the garden about a 1/4 inch deep and scatter them fairly thickly. Cilantro does not transplant well, so always direct sow. You will have harvestable leaves in about 3 to 4 weeks, and when the plant does eventually bolt, let it flower and set seed. Those coriander seeds are a spice you can dry and grind yourself, and they taste noticeably better than anything in a jar from the grocery store. Number 3. Kohlrabi. If you have never grown kohlrabi, you are missing out on one of the strangest looking and most underrated vegetables in the garden. It looks like a pale green or purple alien spacecraft sitting on top of the soil, with leaves shooting out from the sides at odd angles. But peel that bulbous stem, slice it thin, and eat it raw, and it tastes like a crisp, mild, slightly sweet cross between an apple and a turnip. Kohlrabi is a member of the Brassica family, which means it is related to cabbage, kale, and broccoli. The name comes from German. Kohl means cabbage, and rabi means turnip. Cabbage turnip, which is a pretty accurate description of what eating it is like. What makes kohlrabi great for August is speed. Most varieties mature in 45 to 60 days, and the plant tolerates both warm and cool conditions, which makes it flexible during the transition from summer to fall. Direct sow seeds 1/2 inch deep and thin to 6 inches apart. Harvest when the bulbs are 2 to 3 inches in diameter. Wait too long and they turn fibrous and tough. Smaller is sweeter with this one. Number 2. Collard greens. Collards are the toughest green on this list, and that is a compliment. They can handle heat, they can handle cold, and they can handle neglect better than almost any other vegetable in the garden. A well-established collard plant can survive temperatures down to the low 20s Fahrenheit without any protection, and with a little mulch or a cold frame, they will produce leaves well into winter. Collard greens have deep roots in Southern American cuisine, where they have been a staple for centuries, traditionally cooked low and slow with smoked ham hock or bacon. But their history goes much further back than the American South. Collards are one of the oldest members of the cabbage family, and the ancient Greeks and Romans both grew and ate them. In West African cuisine, similar greens are cooked in stews and soups, and enslaved Africans brought their cooking traditions to the American South, where collards became one of the defining vegetables of the regional diet. Plant seeds are 1/4 inch deep and give the plants 18 to 24 inches of space because collards get big. Seriously, a mature collard plant can reach 2 to 3 feet tall with broad, paddle-shaped leaves the size of your forearm. You can start harvesting lower leaves in about 60 to 75 days, picking from the bottom up and letting the plant continue growing from the top. One well-maintained collard plant can feed you for months. If you are new to cooking collards, the traditional southern method works for a reason. Strip the tough center rib out of each leaf, stack the leaves, roll them into a cigar shape, and slice them into ribbons. From there, you can braise them low and slow, or saute them quickly in olive oil with garlic and red pepper flakes for a faster weeknight side. Either way, you are eating one of the most nutrient-dense greens on the planet straight from your own backyard. Number 1. Peas. Most people think of peas as a spring crop, and they are right, partly. Peas planted in March and April produce through early summer. But here is what most gardening guides skip. Peas planted in August produce a second harvest in the fall that is often better than the spring one, because peas, like so many vegetables on this list, prefer cooler temperatures for pod development. The sugars concentrate, the texture stays crisp and tender, and the flavor is noticeably sweeter. Go with a fast-maturing variety for your August planting. Snow peas and snap peas work best because they do not need as long to produce as shelling peas. Plant seeds about 1 inch deep and 2 inches apart and give them something to climb. Even a simple string trellis or a section of wire fencing works. Water consistently and you will be picking pods in 50 to 65 days. The trick is timing. Count backwards from your first expected frost date and make sure you have enough days for the variety you chose. If you are on the edge, go with snow peas because they mature fastest. Peas also do something for your soil that most other vegetables cannot. Like bush beans, they are legumes, which means they form a partnership with soil bacteria that pulls nitrogen directly out of the air and stores it in little nodules on the roots. When the pea plants finish producing and you cut them down, leave the roots in the ground. They will slowly release that stored nitrogen into the soil, naturally feeding whatever you plant in that spot next spring. Free fertilizer, produced underground, from a plant that also fed you pods all fall. That is about as self-sufficient as a backyard garden gets. And that is 15 vegetables that should be going into your garden right now, this month, while everyone else is sitting back thinking the season is winding down. Back at the beginning of this video, we talked about how August feels like the finish line. It is not. For the growers who understand succession planting and fall harvests, August is really the starting gun for the best tasting produce of the entire year. The next video on screen goes deeper into the food secrets that most home growers never learn. Click it now.